What's up? What's up? What's up? What's going on, y'all? This is another episode of the Sit My Thoughts podcast, specifically episode 64 of the Sit My Thoughts pod. I'd like to thank you all for tuning in. Thank you all for listening. If you could, please rate, share, comment, and subscribe. The pod is on all streaming platforms, whichever one is the best for you. I am also on YouTube as well, so please tap in. If you like the content, please give me a subscribe on there as well. Trying to do this more. I'm trying to get more feedback. As you can see, I'm outside today, so I'm doing something different that I normally don't do. But I'm just in a place where I'm trying to get outside of my comfort zone. I want to be a little different. I'm a creative, so I should be able to record my podcast in any environment, and I should be comfortable in doing so. So I definitely appreciate y'all for listening and tapping in. So today, I'm not sure how long I'll be here, but I kind of just wanted to talk about some of the things that's going on in the world. And I specifically want to talk to you guys about me being a journalist. Now, if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, then you know that I'm a journalist. You know that I've been a journalist for 10 plus years. I've lived in a couple of different markets. I'm currently in one of the top 10 markets, top 10 media markets. The last market I was in was also it was a top five media market. Um, all that sounds well and good, right? Like it just lets you know that you yourself that you can work in any environment and you can be good, or if you've been able to secure employment in these markets, then that means you are good at what you do, and you can do anything that's asked for you, right? But I tweeted something a couple of weeks ago, and I said something along the lines of, um, pray for your journalist friends because you don't know how hard the job actually is until you're actually working in the field. And a lot of you guys, you probably watch the news and you think that the people that you see in front of your TV screens, which are the anchors and the reporters, are the ones that's doing all the work, doing all the heavy lifting, doing everything that makes the newscast go. And you couldn't be further from the truth. So I had a very unique name for this episode, and I wanted to title it Fake News, but Real Consequences, right? So the fake news phenomenon has become very prominent and something that people have latched on to in previous years, just depending upon who the former president was and some of the narratives that he was pushing as president. Oftentimes, once you're being challenged um, by media, because it's our job, the media is what you call the fourth estate, and part of the fourth estate's job is to hold elected leaders and elected officials accountable. And part of what that job entails is for us to be able to ask questions, for us to be able to get you the answers to the information that you need. So if you're spending your tax dollars, for an example, on well, you spend your tax dollars on everything, anything that comes to the betterment of your community, the roads, the schools, things like that, your tax dollars are being used to fund those things, right? So a lot of us are lazy, right? Some of the conversations that I have with my parents, they want to talk about what's going on in the community, what's not being done. Um, people who live in apartments, they don't have to pay property taxes and things like that. And they're right about all of those things, right? But if you have an issue about the way that your tax dollars are being used and utilized, okay, it is then your job and your responsibility for not just for me as a journalist to give you the information and to inform you about what's going on in your community, right? You as a citizen, if you want to know what your tax dollars are being used for, again, it's my job to give you the information as a journalist, right? But it's also your job to be an informed citizen. It's also your job to ask these questions. It's also your job to go to these council meetings or board of aldermen meetings, board of supervisors meetings, and ask all of the questions that you need the answers to. What are my tax dollars being used for? Okay, this road has been out of commission for 2, 3 years. What are my tax dollars being used for in order to get the answers that I need in order for this road to be back working, in order for my travel from work to home, work to school, or wherever it is that you're going or wherever it is that you're traveling. Your job as a citizen is to be informed in order to go to these meetings, ask the elected officials the questions that you need the answers to, right? So when it comes to me being a journalist, um, my job is to give you that information, right? My job is to ask those questions for you. I am basically your liaison as a journalist. I come out, I ask you questions. I I want to know what you want to know about your community and what you think needs to be better in your community. But you also play a part in it as well. So when people use the term fake news and those things like that, to me, that's you not being an informed citizen. That's you not going and asking the questions that you need to ask in order to know more about whatever it is that you want to know about what's going on in your community, right? So let's say I get on the news because that's what we do as journalists. We get on the news every day. We go and report things that the community is interested in and that the community wants to know more about, right? So let's say with this whole fake news phenomenon, a good way for you to not worry about if some news is fake is for you to go to these meetings and you ask these questions, right? So that way, if you see us on the news, right, then you can be able to say, or you can call the news station. And this is totally sidebar. I've never known people to just call the news station about random subject the way that they do. It's really crazy. And it's really interesting also. Ooh, that's a net or something, bro. I don't know what's going on. But yeah, I'm trying to do something different. I'm gonna get stung out here, bro. Um, but yeah, so in order to beat the whole fake news phenomenon, right? What you need to do is go to these council meetings, ask these questions. So then, if you see us on the news and we say something that you did not hear at the council meeting about that specific issue, you can call and then you could tell us, well, hey, this is what I heard at the meeting. Um, you guys have the right idea, or you might be in the right ballpark, but yeah, you might be in the right idea, but maybe you're in the wrong ballpark or something like that, right? So yeah. So when it comes to whole fake news phenomenon and things like that, you as a citizen, you have the ability to debunk anything that we come on the news and report. Because at that point, if you do, then it's our job to come back onto the news, make a correction, say, hey, we did the research, we point out what we did wrong or what we did not report in that specific issue. And then that way we can come back to you and give you the most factual information possible. Even like your job is to challenge the fourth estate, right? But fake news was born out of something completely different. Fake news was born out of, okay, you aren't pushing my agenda, right? So because you aren't pushing my agenda, you're the fake news. And there's only one side is and politics is politics. Politics is ingrained in every facet of your life, right? So there's nothing that you can do to be able to get rid of that, or there's nothing that you can do to remove politics from your life. It's just a part of it, right? But what you can do is be more informed about what's going on in your community and the things that's going on around you. That way, if you do feel a way about something that the news has said or reported, then you can come back and debunk that. But again, fake news was born out of something that has nothing to do in the way that journalists are doing their jobs. Fake news was born out of you're not pushing my agenda, so therefore you are fake news. I actually in graduate school, I did my master's thesis, and I pretty much talked about the way that the media treats black and brown people. Now, if I could go back, I titled it something along the lines of media insensitivity to people of color. What I should have titled it was media insensitivity to black and brown people. And then I could have gave you more examples, which I did in my thesis anyway. But that was just something that I wanted to highlight. Um, so yeah, fake news is not what you think it is. But just going back to my thesis really quick, I just lost my train of thought, but I remember why I brought that up. So I went to the University of Missouri, and I spoke to an expert there, right? And she basically told me, and this is just debunking the whole fake news thing, but people watch the news that they identify with. So if you don't want government in every aspect of your life, right? that means you identify as a Republican. And if you identify as a Republican, you're going to watch Fox News because they are the ones that you mostly agree with. They are the ones who are pushing the narrative and the agendas that you mostly agree with, right? But if you're someone, for an example, who you don't want, um, what do you not want? You don't want the government telling you what to do with your body and things of that nature, right? Well, in that case, you will more so identify as a Democrat. So if you identify as a Democrat, that means you're more than likely watching MSNBC. You're more than likely watching um, CNN and things of that nature, right? So I don't know if you guys knew that, but that's kind of how it breaks down. Like there's actual factual research that supports that. People who are Republicans mostly watch Fox News. People who are Democrats or identify as Democrats mostly watch CNN, MSNBC, things of that nature. So you're pretty much, when it comes to news, there's no such thing as fake news. There's no such thing as fake news. Fake news, again, is about narrative and agenda pushing. We're not telling you that this is what you should feel and this is what you should think. So you're identifying with whoever your political party and your ideals align with. So there's no such thing as fake news, just FYI. Just wanted to put that out there. Um, but yeah, I also wanted to talk about in this episode, uh, give not give your journalism friends some grace, but like I said, when I first started this episode, I tweeted something along the lines of, um, this was a couple weeks ago, but I tweeted something along the lines of, pray for your friends who work in journalism because you don't know, you don't have an idea, you don't have a clue as to what they're going through. And this is what I mean by that. And I think today is a perfect example of that. You have journalists in newsrooms, specifically in Georgia, for an example, who are dealing with a mass shooting at a high school, right? And in them dealing with what's going on with a mass shooting at a high school, you're dealing with all types of visuals. They're being bombarded with phone calls, emails, everything that you guys as viewers don't see. I always like to tell my parents as a journalist, um, this job is hard. And I know just since I've been at my current news station, a couple of anchors, veteran anchors, have left our stations. Um, Obviously, I didn't necessarily ask them why they left per se, but just journalism in general, there are a number of factors in which people leave journalism. First of all, journalism isn't the best paying job to have. It can be a thankless job. Um, the conditions, the work schedules, the hours are abstract. If you're somebody who has a significant other, if you have children, this job is hard on having like a family unit because you don't have the type of structure or you don't have the schedule that would allow you to really be there and spend the type of time that I would think that, if you have somebody, if you have a family, you don't have the kind of time that you would like in order to do the things with your family and your loved ones that you would like to do. That's the first thing. Second thing, well, the second thing I talked about the work structure and things like that. The job doesn't pay a lot. And thirdly, it's just a hard job to work in because, like I was just saying, what I was telling my parents was working in this field, I see things that you don't see, right? So let's say, for an example, we can talk about the mass shooting that occurred today in Georgia, right? 9 times out of 10, the school resource officer who stopped the 14-year-old shooter had on a body cam, maybe. Let's say he did have on a body camera, right? Um, that means there is footage of that, right? So law enforcement is going to watch that footage. Um, Now he arrested the shooter and he probably took him into custody and things like that, right? But you also had to think of there were other law enforcement who had to respond to the scene who had to get out and do their jobs in order to, get the people who were shot and those who were injured to the hospital and to safety and things like that, right? So there's body camera footage of that. At some point, that body camera footage is going to be released to the media. And we are going to be the ones who is going to watch that video, right? We have to watch it because we need to know what to blur, what not to show before it makes it to your TV screens. So we have to watch that footage. So we don't put out anything. Just another thing, you probably heard of the FCC and things like that. The FCC is for everything, whether it's music, movies, even the news. We're all governed by the FCC. So we can't intentionally put gore or someone being shot on television. We can't do it, right? So that means in order for you guys not to see that as a viewer, we have to see it first. And I don't think you guys sometimes understand that, right? You go out through. I just tried to do something different today, so you good. Yeah. Um, yeah. So when it comes to doing the news and things like that, like we see these things before you guys see it and before it makes it to your TV screen. So I was telling my mom a couple of weeks ago, there was a shooting that occurred wild. Like it's really some of the wildest stuff that you see. And working in news, like it's just a part of it, unfortunately. But it's some of the wildest stuff that you'll ever see or experience. So um there was a shooting at a wing spot in DeKalb County. And the guy, I don't know if the guy was trying to rob the other guy or what, but I think they had got into an argument initially, right? And then um, they tussled with one another inside of the wing spot. And then the other guy backed out on him. He backed out on dude and he shot him. Shot him a couple times, as a matter of fact. So in the video, you see the guy, it's wild. He is crawling across the floor because he had clearly been shot in like his abdomen or something like that. But the guy is crawling across the floor, crawling, crawling, crawling. Like you can see a trail of blood. I'm seeing this. You can see a trail of blood as he's crawling across the floor, crawling across the floor. Right? There was a guy. There were other people in the wing spot as well, but they eventually got away because the guy wasn't shooting at them. He wasn't trying to shoot at them. He was literally trying to shoot at the guy that he had the argument or whatever like that with, right? So one guy, while he was shooting, he hid behind a trash what do you call it thing, trash bin or whatever. He was like this, had his leg up, trying to keep himself from being hit by a bullet or whatever like that. He eventually walked out the restaurant and left. The guy that he had shot, everybody that was in the restaurant, even the people that was taking order in the back, they eventually walked out and left. But somebody called a police ambulance for the guy. Um, so yeah, I'm seeing a guy crawling on the ground, and the only thing that I could compare it to possibly is a snail. A snail leaves a trail. You know what I'm saying? As it goes behind, as it does what it does. It does what a snail does, right? So imagine seeing somebody being shot, crawling across the floor, while they're bleeding out. All right. So as that happens, another guy, the guy that shot him, he ran out the store, and he ran back. I don't know if he was trying to look in or peek in to see if the guy was down or if he was, maybe dead or whatever. I don't know, right? The guy who shot the guy who was laying on the ground, he decides after he runs away, looks in, runs away again, he eventually comes back to the store, to the wing spot, and he runs in because he thinks the guy is disabled or whatever, right? Because he had done shot him multiple times. So the guy left his bag in the store. So I guess he decides to come back in and get his bag, right? And he attempts to run back out of the store. The guy he shot, I don't know how, he somehow got to his gun. And again, mind you, now this guy is bleeding. He's bleeding out on the ground. This guy done picked up his gun as the guy runs back out of the store. He gets the door open. The guy gets the door open. And as soon as he gets the door open, the guy that was laying on the ground fired multiple shots at him. Boom, boom, boom. I saw the guy's body just collapse right outside of the store. Just body just falls right in front of the door outside of the wing spot. And then what you then hear, and I know I'm being very what's the word I'm looking for? Descriptive. I'm being very descriptive with how I'm describing this to you, but that's just how the body camera video, well, not the body camera video, this was actual footage, surveillance footage from the store. And then somebody was recording it outside as well. You hear the guy saying, "Help me. I don't want to die. I don't want to die. Help me, please. Help me. Help me, please. Help me." It's jarring. Like, it's so hard to explain just how often you see that type of stuff. It really is. And just imagine, that's not the only time that we see that type of stuff. And another thing that working the news really shows you is a couple of things, actually. For one, we really don't value life the way that we should. Because there have been multiple stories that I've covered since I've been here. It's been senseless stuff, literally senseless stuff. Like, not something for you to go to jail for the rest of your life for. It's really not. It's never typically, when we end up covering crime, it's never typically about somebody is harming somebody else's family. So then, you take that matter into your own hands, and then you decide to do whatever it is that you do. And I'm not justifying death or murder or anything like that. I'm just saying, in these situations, and the amount of death in which I see and the amount of death in which I cover, it's never that serious. Like I said, these two dudes are arguing inside of a wing spot. And then that led to gunfire somehow. And then both of them had guns on them. That's another thing that we don't talk enough about. I'm just, when did we just need guns to the point to where you need to walk around in the restaurant with one? You need to go to the grocery store with one. I'll never forget, and I'm getting a little bit off track, but I'll never forget when I was living in Mobile, Alabama. I think I was at a park. I think I was at a park one day. No, the first time I saw somebody with a gun in public, I was at a Walmart neighborhood market. And I saw this dude walking down the aisle, and I could he had his in a holster, though. White guy had his gun in a holster. And I was just so baffled. That was my first time seeing somebody in public with a gun. I was so baffled because I didn't understand why. I didn't understand the point of it. Like, none of it made sense to me. And it was just the strangest thing to see, to be honest with you. Like, seeing somebody in a grocery store with a gun. That was my first time. I think this was back in 2016. That was my first time seeing somebody with a gun in public. And I walked on the other aisle. I didn't, I didn't get it. I didn't understand it. It was real wild. It was random to me. I just didn't understand it. You know what I'm saying? I walked on the other aisle, and then I'll never forget another time there was a park that I used to go to work out at, shoot balls, shoot hoops, everything. Like it felt like the crib. It felt like Jackson, Mississippi to me, you know. And I'll never say I saw a younger black guy walking, and he had a gun on his waist, and I'm just thinking to myself, bro, if you know the law or you know how you come into contact with police or anything like that, it's not gonna go the same way for you as it would somebody else. It's just not. So I thought that was really wild. I thought that was really different. I just never thought I would walk around in public seeing people with guns. Like I don't think that's anything that you ever really get used to. At least I didn't. Like I just didn't. Obviously, being from Mississippi, I can't even think of a time in Mississippi where I've seen somebody in a store with a gun or something like that. And I want to say Mississippi is open carry too. I could be wrong, but I'm just baffled that I didn't see that in Mississippi before I saw it in Alabama. So yeah, um, but yeah, it's just really interesting times. Just seeing how we don't value life and just I'm really curious at the people who walk around with guns in public. Like, does it give you a sense of security? Like, what is it? Because most instances, I don't think anybody goes to the grocery store expecting for somebody to rob them or kill them in a grocery store. I just don't, and it's a very weird phenomenon for me because I just don't get it, and I don't think there's any way that you could explain it to me where I would get it. Um, but again, working in news, I try not to say, and I try not to become so desensitized to death, but it's amazing to me how it's amazing to me at just how we cover crime. Crime is a part of the fabric of your community. Unfortunately, it's just an unfortunate part of it. It's just a part of the fabric of the community. Like we have to cover it, right? But we're also being mindful about how we cover crime, um, because as unfortunate as it is, somebody gets shot every day, right? And I can't really say this with much fact, but I feel like people are desensitized to shootings at this point because if we weren't desensitized to shootings, they would not keep happening. Whether that be at school, there be school shootings, um, wherever these types of random acts of violence happen at, um, we wouldn't be as desensitized to it because it keeps happening, and because it keeps happening, that is a willful response to it happening. You aren't doing anything about it if it continues to keep happening, right? So, um, yeah, it's interesting. But like I said, just going back to my original point, it's amazing at how we don't value life in the way in which we should. Because most of the shootings that I end up seeing, they're over nothing. There's no reason you can't go in a wing spot, get your wings, and not end up dying. You know. Now again, this was an argument between these two guys, and honestly, I don't even know if either one of them lived. Probably need to check on that for sure. Definitely need to check on that. But yeah, there was another thing. This guy might have been whistling at another, not whistling, but he was talking to this guy's underage daughter, right? So the guy walks his daughter out to the car, gets in the car. He done pulled his gun out and he started trying to pistol whip the dude, right? Pistol whip the dude. The guy eventually gets away from him and he shoots him, or he shoots at him. I don't know if he initially hit the guy, but he shoots at the guy. And the guy gets away, he moves, and he runs. he runs the other way, right? Now, at this point, you protecting your child initially. Once you walk your child to the car, you know what I'm saying? At that point, you should have got in the car. If you felt the way, you should have called the police, right? Don't know all of this intimate details of why it happened the way that it did. But here is the overkill. It's, if the guy, touched your daughter or something like that, you call the police, you beat him up or whatever like that. The other guy didn't have a gun because he ran. So after he pistol whips the guy and then fires a shot at the guy runs off and runs that way, right? So this guy, he gathers himself after he done stopped pistol whipping the dude and shot at the dude, and he gets up, right? He then walks around a truck and he follows the dude, and then he murders the dude. The guy stopped running. You know what I'm saying? I guess the guy thought he was safe, but he thought he was okay. He then gets up, walks around the truck, fires at the dude, walks him down, literally, because the guy stopped running. He thought he was safe. He stopped running. The guy walks him down. Bang, 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 bang. He kills the guy. The initial incident, he probably would have been justified for that. But once you walk that man down, he's no longer a threat to you, but you walked him down, you killed him. You murdered him at this point. So now you're going to jail. We are so desensitized, or we are just all so on edge. You really just have to be careful of how you talk to people, how you treat people. Like, it's not about walking on eggshells, but it's about moving with respect, moving with a certain type of way. Obviously, don't be touching nobody's child and stuff like that. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm basically saying as a journalist, right? I see more death over insignificant stuff than I should, which tells me that we are all on edge at some point. Like, life ain't everything that we would probably like for it to be. And that's unfortunate because we're all living through these instances and situations, right? But that doesn't mean you have the right to take someone's life, right? You have the right to remove them from their family. That's not your, to do. But as a journalist, right? I try my best not to become desensitized to death, and I try my best not to allow it to put me in a mindset of um to be honest, it kind of is that way though. Like, I'm not desensitized to death, but I cover shootings every day. Every day. It's a part of my job. I send my photographers out to shootings probably every day. I'll never forget one night I was working. There were like 5 shootings in one night. Never seen anything like it. So when you have people walking around talking about fake news this, fake news that, um, I just want y'all to be more mindful at who is being affected by the type of things that you say, just based on the type of things that we see every day on a day-to-day basis. The person that you see in front of your television at 5, 6, 10, or 11 every night, they aren't the ones going out doing the legwork. Now, the reporters, yes, the reporters are going out. They have sources. They're going out asking the proper questions. They have sources that allows them to do their jobs and to give you the news also. But the ones are the ones who really makes everything go, really makes everything move, are people like me who are behind the scenes that you never see. You've never seen me in front of your TV screen. But you better believe I'm the one doing all the work. You better believe I'm the one that's giving the reporters the information that they need, or I'm putting them in contact with a public official that they might not have information on. I'm the one that's filing public records requests. I'm the one that's allowing us to get into courtrooms to cover cases that we need to cover in order to bring you guys the answers about things that's going on and happening in your community, right? So when you talk about fake news, Fake news has real consequences. Fake news has real consequences, and it has consequences on the psyche of those of us who are working behind the scenes. Obviously, the reporters and the photographers who are out on the scenes as well. But those of us who are behind the scenes, and again, those of us who work in the newsroom and the photographers, we're the ones seeing the most gruesome stuff. We're the ones who make sure that you don't see any of that stuff on your television screen when the news comes on. So give these journalists some grace. Even the reporters out on the scene too, because it's just as emotional for them. I'm just saying, those of us who are behind the scenes, those of us that you don't see, it's tough. This is a tough job. Being a journalist is not easy. It's easy to get on the internet and criticize and talk about what we not doing and the things that you don't see and stuff like that. It's real easy to do that. But you don't know everything that's going on behind the scenes. You don't know everything that goes into trying to get you answers for questions, being threatened by, people that you meet out on scenes if you're a photographer. If you're somebody that's working in the newsroom like myself, you're taking phone calls from people who are threatening you, who are telling you, calling you fake news, and how they're no longer going to watch your news station and stuff like that anymore because of the way that you report the news, the way that you tell the news. And it's only because the news doesn't fit your narrative. It doesn't fit what you think that we should be saying, and things like that. So fake news has real consequences. And hopefully you listen to this episode and you listen and you hear and you see that, I don't know what people really think about journalists. Like, I just know the stuff that I see online where they talk about people pushing narratives and agendas and fake news and all of the rhetoric that's surrounding that. And obviously that's one specific person who pretty much started that narrative and boosted that narrative to a not just a local level, but a national level as well. Like, you've had journalists being killed by everyday people. So it isn't just something to just sneeze at or laugh at or talk about, um, in regards to how the news is being covered, how journalists are doing our jobs and things like that. It's not easy. It's really not. Again, I see some of the most horrific stuff that never makes it to your television. And it doesn't make it to your television because I'm the one who sees it first. I am one of the people who vets it first before anybody else does. So you guys don't have to live through that. You don't have to witness that, right? So if you have friends who are journalists or you have friends who work in media, show them some grace. Check on them. Really check on them. You have people who work in media and journalism that commit suicide. This job is hard. You think y'all probably just think I go into a newsroom every day. I sit down, which I do. I'm not doing any really manual labor. I'm not doing any of that. I only don't do that because my job doesn't require me to do that. Doesn't mean I don't know how to. But I think there is a certain misconception and a notion about people, specifically journalists, who put themselves in dangerous situations every day. People shoot up newsrooms. Like, we just saw the situation in Memphis. Was it this year? It might have been last year. I think it was last year. A guy walked to a certain news station in Memphis and decided that he was going to walk in with an automatic weapon. And if the security there didn't think to automatically, lock the doors, and they didn't have, like, bulletproof type glass and stuff like that, that could have been an entirely different situation. So just be mindful when you're talking about fake news or you're watching the news and you want to complain about what you don't see and things like that. Become an informed citizen. Know what's going on in your community. Know what's going on around you. Know what's going on with your tax dollars. And again, our job as the fourth estate is to hold elected officials accountable. Your job as a informed citizen is to be sure that you have all of the necessary information that you need in order to hold us accountable as journalists, right? So if you have that information, then you have a legitimate gripe about the way that we covered something, or if we did not cover something, or if we did not ask the questions that you thought that we should have asked, right? So just keep that in mind. Journalism ain't the easiest job that you might think that it is. It's really not. There's a lot that goes into it. So give journalists grace. We ain't perfect. We try our absolute best to be. We try our best to go on air and tell the news and to make sure that we fact check things to the bare minimum so we can make sure that we're not giving you any falsified information that someone is telling us. We do our absolute best to make sure that nothing erroneous makes it to the news. Whether that's in print, because I started my career as a print journalist, and now I'm working in broadcast news. So we do our darndest to make sure that nothing erroneous ends up in a newscast, or we don't say something that offends, or we don't do our jobs just as far as simply telling you the news. We don't. Our job isn't to tell you what to think. There are outlets out there that has news specifically catered to telling you what to think if your political views and your political affiliations align with the things that that specific outlet is talking about. There are outlets for that. But for those who work in mainstream media and mainstream news, that is not our jobs. So fake news, real consequences. This has been another episode of the Sip My Thoughts podcast. Again, I'd like to thank you all for tuning in. Thank you all for listening. Again, if you could like, comment, subscribe. I'm on all social media platforms and Sip My Thoughts. Please be sure to leave me a rating, leave me a comment. Let me know what you think about the podcast. If you want to have views, thoughts, and opinions on what you just heard here, you can email me, sipmythoughts, SIPMYTHOUGHTS @gmail.com. You can also shoot me a message on any one of my social media platforms. Again, you can find me at Sip My Thoughts everywhere. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you all for listening. Until next time. And again, if you have some feedback, hit me, sipmythoughts@gmail.com. Shoot me a message on one of my social media platforms. If there's anything else that you want me to talk about or discuss, I can absolutely do that as well. Peace.